And I think that the problem is that first the situation is still highly unstable.
Correct.
Second, Trump is like the absolute worst partner you could want in any venture.
All right.
Because he can change his mind tomorrow. He can be
Yeah.
completely neutralized. By this summer. I mean, like nobody in their right mind would do business with Trump. It's just
Rupert, this is exactly why I brought you on, as Jean was going off on Trump.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm there for the pylon. Don't worry.
Rupert, how are you?
I'm good, man. Happy New Year to you both. If we can still
hey,
do that.
Rupert, how you doing?
John, long time. I'm well. Yourself?
Doing great. Doing great.
Good to hear, man. Good to hear.
Rupert, listen, thanks again for coming on. We got a lot to talk about. I'm going to give, like I do with everyone, I'm going to give you a bio, and then we could just jump right in.
Yep.
So, Rupert, we know you as people that know your career in the financial sector. You spent 30 years in the financial sector, in London at first, then New York, and then the last 17 or 18 years in Colombia. You're currently the CEO of Alma Air. I hope we get to speak about this. It's a seaplane startup in Colombia, which is very interesting. And you were also on the board of Viva Air for 7 years. So why you went from finance to the airline industry, I have no idea, but we'll talk about that. You started your career in finance. Obviously, you worked for one of the early emerging market powerhouses, Robert Fleming in London, moving to New York for Deutsche Bank. And then you made the final move to Colombia, where you spent, 12 years working at a series of, that's what we know you from, working at all these large institutional financial institutions. You eventually became the CEO of Celfin, which is now BTG, then as a managing director of Bancolombia, the largest bank in the country. And then you also worked for the Colombian Stock Exchange for a number of years, heading up their international movements. You're the author of 2 books, and I believe you spent a decade, you mentioned, as the honorary British consul in Medellin, which is interesting. And you're currently an independent board member of a U.S.-listed SPAC, I believe, called Brava Acquisition, and a global trustee of Safeport International. So there's so much to talk about, but I guess let's just start at the core, which is your thoughts on Colombia today, the economy, and then maybe go into politics, and obviously the current chaotic environment, Venezuela, and then obviously Mr. Trump, who just stands there overseeing everything. So let's go, Rupert. Start us off.
Yeah, where do you want to start? You tell me where. Thanks for the invitation. Good to see you both. Well, Colombia, I think you guys have been around this market long enough. Colombia, along with a lot of Latin America, has been a basket case for a long time. Colombia has been that way for a long time. Currently, we've come to a particular... What we see here is what we see in the world. We've seen over the last 5 or 6 years a massive development of polarization. We went through 20 years of right-wing governments, from Uribe through Santos through Duque. Then, obviously, we had Petro come into power, which was a shock to most people. It shouldn't really be, because the demographics here kind of supported that eventually we would get a left-wing. Here he's called a communist. He's a soft socialist. He's not really... But he's been painted that way. He's been painted as a Maduro, a similar kind of, pantomime villain. But the problem is here, what he did when he came in, which is the mistake he made when he was Bogota mayor, he tried to change everything in 4 years. Colombia needs 4 decades. So whilst the economy has been trucking on fairly well, as it's going very well, and they just announced an unemployment number for the end of the year, last year, 8%. It's a record low. We've got record low unemployment. Retail sales are good. Imports are strong. Domestic demand's picking up. But the problem is the pushbacks come on the more fiscal level, because he's been trying to reform everything, right? Tax reform, a health reform. There's just a couple of them. And he tried to do everything, upset too many people, upset the private sector to an immense amount. And now we've got not a fiscal meltdown, but because we're going into an election year, we've got Congress elections in March. We've got the first round of presidential election in May. Obviously, anything he does, whatever it is, he issued, $4 or $5 billion of local bonds to PIMCO, and you would think he'd issued them to the Russian KGB pension fund. It was, they should be happy that PIMCO want to invest money here and that kind of amount, that they've got the confidence. but it was painted as like an underhand deal with some shady foreigners. But that's just where we are. It's polarization. So they jump on anything he does, and they're going to smash him down. And that's the problem, because the elite are trying to hang on to their seats. They run the press, and there you get a really complicated situation. So you find him fighting with the press the whole time. And that's it. He's become the de facto kind of left-wing leader of Latin America. Lula's gone very quiet since he came back in. I mean, Petro's really become the spokesman. He's the one who goes to the UN. He's the guy who stands up to Donald. He's the guy who criticizes Gaza. So he's been that guy. He's become the bad guy. And then that's where we are. We're just in this chaotic period. You know, he put in, because they shot down his latest tax reform, he put in an economic emergency package to reclaim that same 3 or 4 billion shortfall for this year. That's just been suspended by the Supreme Court. So now we don't know if that's coming in or not, or won't, or it'll be different. And this keeps going on. Everything keeps going back to the courts. He did the pension reform, which was a decent pension reform. It needed to be done. But the pension funds on the private side, they're all offended. They don't like it. And again, that went through the appeal court process. And nothing moves forward. Colombia is a country of lawyers. It makes it just ever more complicated. So that's where we are. The elections are coming, and it's not going to get any simpler for the next 6 months, I imagine.
Rupert, it sounds a lot like Chile, where, you know, the leftist came in, a young guy full of ambitions, and he hit walls immediately, and in the end, he'll have done practically nothing, right? It's
yeah, no, Chile. I mean, that was it. When he got into Chile, you could kind of see, well, maybe it's going to happen here again. I mean, yeah, and in Chile, again, you're against the institutions. Very difficult. And in Colombia, the institutions here are so strong. I mean, they're good. I mean, the central bank is strong. That's good. But the problem is, you've got so much politics involved on the legal side. They can just stop him everywhere they want. You know, it goes down one alley, no. Down there, no. And that's the problem. And the same as Chile. So it's not that he hasn't achieved anything. And what we're going to see in these elections, I think, is going to be a surprise, because I live in Medellin, and Medellin is it's just a little closed area. They don't see anything outside of this valley. So this is where the right wing are. This is where Uribe comes from. This is base. Mm-hmm. But out in the countryside, he's done immense work in the agricultural sector and in employment. He's put 150,000 houses with fiber optic for education. He's done a lot of stuff that people don't see, and we'll see how that comes back. Because when you look at we've got the Congress elections first. He's expected to pick up on the left wing, because he didn't have a formal party last time. His party's expected to pick up around 35% of the seats in the Congress. So he hasn't done that bad a job. So that's interesting. And when we get onto the presidential elections, we could again see some surprises.
So you're not at all convinced that it's part of the right wave. It's destined to happen for the right to take over.
The problem with the right wing here, they don't have a good candidate. They had 4 different women. None of them were tolerable. And in fact, they're quite offensive in terms of their backgrounds. Then we had this new guy, Abelardo de la Espriella, the lawyer with the pocket. Just looks wrong on so many levels. His beard he's just immaculate, yeah? But again, ironically, his background has been defending drug lords here in the courts. That's some of his main clients, all the paramilitaries. So his background is defending the bad guys. So whilst he initially came on the scene and everyone said he's the right-wing solution, now there's a lot of pushback in the polls. He's around 15, 17%, and we've got to go through a whole bunch of primaries. And the primaries aren't even organized yet. Cepeda needs to get into a primary to win that primary. The court today was going to sit down and decide whether he can. There'll be a decision tomorrow. I've been hearing that Cepeda may be blocked from going into the primary because there's such a fear. I mean, Cepeda, unlike Petro, Cepeda is a really, really good guy. He's a human rights guy. He's very smart. He's very organized. So the right fear him even more. Because unlike Petro, who's gone scattergun and got nothing done, or not much, this guy might be a bit more strategic, get stuff done, and he's going to pick up a lot of votes. So there seems to be, again, it's the courts. We come back to the same. Will he get blocked from running? Will the register stop him coming in? And that's what we just don't have. We still don't have a lineup 5 months ahead of 4 or 5 candidates. We don't know the lineup. So it's very complicated.
What is the potential impact of Trump on this? I'm sure he'll try to influence it in one way or another. Is that can he actually influence it in a positive way for the right, or is he?
I would expect him. He's gone quiet, right? He took Maduro, and as we know, that was all just for the oil, as we know. And there's no more attacks on motorboats. Suddenly, Petro's become a kind of in between. Between him and Rodriguez, the VP in Venezuela. Suddenly, like Petro's back in the good books. Suddenly he's being invited to Washington on February the 5th. Suddenly he's not such the bad guy. He's not the drug lord. He hasn't got the coke laboratories. I think Trump, if he's going to influence the elections, will go with the Honduran model. He'll probably say, hey, if you vote this guy in, I'll send you $10 billion or whatever it is. I'll drop all the tariffs. And that's his game. That's what he's done all over the place already. That would be the way he would play it. But he may end up actually not having a candidate to do that with. See, that's the problem. These guys have got to sort out who's going to run on the right, or will it be center right? There's 3 or 4 different pockets, and it's very difficult to see who's going to get to the second round. Cepeda, if he runs, will make the second round. He should do. But he may end up running against a middle right candidate, which for Trump is fine. If you want to support a middle right candidate, go ahead. That won't bother anybody. But it's difficult to see yet who exactly is going to be on the ballot come May.
The right has had a number of years to get ready for this. Why do you think they're so unorganized, Ropes?
It's very strange because you've got Uribe who's still there, right? He's getting on in years, but he's still everyone. You go to the billboards here and it says, "It's him, it's me," and there's a picture of Uribe here next to me. That's how everyone's billboard is, right? I'm with this guy, so vote for me. There's nothing about what I stand for or what I'm going to do or who I am, my background. The problem they had had 4 women, all from the right, all wanted the same seat. And then you have Miguel Uribe, the guy who got assassinated. So those 5 were there and they had the candidates. I think a lot of the thought was that Miguel Uribe was going to take that seat. And obviously, he's no longer with us. His dad wanted to get in on the show. He's been ousted by the right as well. And the 4 girls they're not stand-up sellable candidates. And that's the problem. They don't have, because last time when Duque won, when Duque was brought back from Washington to run because they didn't have a candidate. And Duque kind of looked okay, worked in Washington, he's at the IMF or World Bank. So they kind of had to ship him in for the election. And this time there is no successor to Uribe. That person's not around. And if they're around, a lot of them are so neck deep in scandal, it's very difficult for them to run. So you think after 20 years, but again, the country's tired. And obviously the narrative of the left is, and they're correct, you've had 20 years to fix this. You left us in a mess. In the classic conversation is the national debt. You would think that Petro had tripled the national debt in 4 years. No, it's just hit an all-time high. But according to the press, you would think that it's all his. They don't understand it's an accumulated debt over decades. But that's how they paint him. And then the left is saying, well, no. You were the guy, Duque, who didn't reduce gasoline subsidies. So we've done $5 billion a year in gasoline subsidies, which have gone to the rich. So now he's done that. Gasoline prices are up where they should be. They're at market levels. So the right have I don't know if they got caught off guard or they just assumed, living in their blinker world, that they were going to win anyway. But now it's kind of changed up a little bit, and it's a much more unsure picture.
What is Petro's popularity right now? What are the polls saying in terms of?
Let me think. He's probably around 35, 40. That's where they all end up, to be honest. He's never been that high. He was probably at 50 when he got in. And again, the polling here, we've seen opinion polls ahead of presidential elections, right? They somewhat vary. Here, they're unbelievable. There's a guy, for example, if you look at another candidate, Roy Barreras, his last job was the ambassador in London. He's from somewhere in the middle. He's from the pork belly kind of Congress. He knows how to move things, right? Roy Barreras is polling 1%. This man could still win the election if the chips fall. And that's where we are.
But just in terms of popularity, not electoral popularity, but what does the population think of Petro?
It's a very mixed picture. It depends where you are. A lot of people don't win. He's just put in a 23% minimum wage hike. So there's 1.5 million people who are definitely going to vote for him. But everyone says about that. But then when just before Duque ran last time, I think we had an 11% increase, which back in that day was totally unprecedented. So it's happened before. Duque against like 4% inflation put in 11% increase. And everyone's like, what's that for? So it's been seen before, but not on this level. But again, this was him taking out revenge on the elite, on the private sector, because they shot down absolutely every reform he was trying to do. Shoot down my tax reform, shoot down this. Then they forget in the end that he's the hand that feeds. He's the man who can put stuff in by decree. And this was his way of going, well, okay, you screwed me over for the last year during reform process. Take that one. And there's no going back on it. It's a decree. They tried to put that into the courts, but no, it's faded away. And to be honest, for all the fuss, it's 1.5 million people being paid about $100 more a month. No, $50 more a month. If an economy can't take that in, then you're not running your company properly. I mean, the whole scandal is like, have you seen all the shops that don't open after 7 o'clock because you have to pay overtime? Yeah, but the economy will adjust quite quickly to that. I mean, this is a country where there was no overtime, no weekend time. So in his labor reform, he put that in, and that was seen as a massive scandal. And it's things that in most countries are just normal. It's dignified labor. So there's an awful lot of people in that. Remember, this is the pyramid here. Remember, the Gini coefficient here is only Honduras. I think is worse in anywhere in the Americas. So there's an awful lot of people at the bottom of the pyramid still see him as doing good stuff. It's a strange thing. Obviously, here in Medellin, no. I mean, they just can't abide the man. And so to show where we are in polarism, so Cepeda got on a plane. I think it was from Bogota up to Medellin this week. As he was getting on the plane, there was passengers going, "We're not flying with this guy." I mean, that's how polarized we are, right? No, what do you mean you're not flying with that guy? I'm not flying with that socialist guy on here. I mean, it's the kind of stuff that just madness. It's like, I'm just getting a plane. I'm just getting a 30-minute ride. Oh, no, that's offensive.
Are there any,
How many people would get off the plane in the U.S. if Trump came on board?
You wouldn't be on there, would you? It's too dangerous to get on with him.
are there any accurate polls, Rupert, that you can?
No, I don't. Well, if you had to take a poll of polls, which is very difficult because they arrive every day, Cepeda would be around 35% on the left. Espriella probably 15 to 18%. And then it kind of drops off very quickly to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if you add them all up, I would say when you look at all the candidates, because we still probably got 50 candidates, right? Probably. And I think you're looking at center to left is a solid 45% still. And then out to the right, you've probably only got 25, 30% of, right to right. You'd think it would be different, but there's a lot of polls, and the right aren't gaining traction, but that's because they don't have a single candidate. They haven't organized themselves. And then in the middle, you've got this unholy alliance of ex-finance ministers, ex-governors who claim they're like the middle ground and we're the party for the country. I mean, they may spin up a candidate, and that'll be right in the middle. But again, you got 7 or 8 people in that primary. I don't know how friendly they're going to be if they don't win the primary. We're all together. But what happens if, oh no, I'm not interested. I didn't win the primary. I'm out. So we still got probably another month before we actually know how we're going to look in runners and riders.
So Cast won in Chile, I think basically on immigration and crime issues. Security, that's not an issue in Colombia?
Yeah, security's been a big issue. I mean, security in the countryside's got worse. There's no question at all. Petro is seen as enabling he tried for this total peace thing, right, from day one. Let's get everyone else in. It's failed. It's just too much. It's another thing you can't achieve in 4 years. And the problem is the biggest groups here now, the Clan de Golf was the biggest. And they're not really, they come from the old paramilitary background, the right-wing guerrillas. They're the biggest group. They're the biggest drug group. The ELN and the FARC are out there. Then you got the dissidents, and you got tons of other groups. They pay good salaries. I mean, they pay a good wage to be in those groups. And so the countryside, I mean, it's not on fire. We're not in flames here. I mean, we've been down this road before. But the right will always run on that ticket. Uribe's, what's Uribe's phrase? Strong heart, stronger hand or something like that. And it's got this thing. It's like, it's strong. It's all about security. We're going to bring security back. And we always have an upswing in violence just before the elections. A coincidence? I'm sure it's not. It never is, because then it's the right going, oh, we'll fix that problem. When half of the problem is the guerrillas that they founded back in the day of buying paramilitary protection. So security is always a problem here. That's always going to be the way. In 10 years, we'll have the same discussion. There'll still be pockets of guerrillas, no question.
It sounds to me you're arguing that Colombia is less like Chile and more like Brazil and Brazil and Mexico, where actually these populist anti-business regimes are actually quite popular and sustain themselves. Is that
he's
correct?
definitely done way. Bearing in mind, you've had the private sector pushing back on him. No one wants to help him with the reform process. He doesn't have the votes in Congress. He never has. He hasn't got a formal party. He's actually done a lot. He's kept this economy. This economy is ticking over. You can't get it. As I said, unemployment's at record lows. It doesn't happen by accident. And there's always a thing about informal labor. Yeah, but there's always been informal labor of 50%. That's always been the way. So you got unemployment down. You can't get in a shopping mall. You can't park. For Medellin, when you have the consumer confidence every month that comes out, Medellin is always the least confident because there's a political aspect to it, right? Because you go around to these guys and, it's Chicken Little, the sky's falling in, it's all over. But you try and get in a shopping mall in Medellin, you go to a car concession, you go and buy a hybrid car and get told you have to wait 1.5 years for delivery. The housing the housing market's boomed. They're putting up towers everywhere still. So if Medellin's the least confident of the whole country, and it's booming, and house prices probably up 30% since Petro came in this town. And this is the town we don't believe in him, and they're scared of him, and he's going to take everything. So he's done better than the press would suggest. There's no question at all. He hasn't done as a president. He's done an okay job. He's failed on reforms because he's just tried too much. For me, he should have come in and just pick two. I'm going to do health and pensions, or pensions and education. But he's tried to do everything. It was his mistake in Bogota. And in the end, he's just got ministers resign and they can't deal with it. There's too much workload. And it just gives them a huge stick to beat him with. Just everyone gets to beat him. He's got all the federations pushing back on him. Whatever he does, it's hard. And then the press are privately owned, right? Press and TV stations are privately owned. So, and they're held by the same big, conglomerates who've got, we got a TV station as well. And that just makes it it actually makes it very difficult. And that's the world all over to actually find out what the truth is at the moment. It's not easy.
So the stock market is booming. It's one of the best performing markets in the world.
Yep.
Are investors, whoever they may be, these investors, are they assuming a victory of the right, or is that irrelevant, do you think?
No, because last year we were up, 55%? No, the stock market, when I left the stock market a couple of years ago, we had volumes that were just pathetic, $8, $9, $10 million, right? But they've started to pick up again with 20, with 25, with $30 million, $40 million some days. And we've got a couple of things going on. Last year, simply put, people were into the stock market. Things were moving, companies were moving, results were good. And then on top of that, you've now had, under the new pension decree, he's now telling the pension companies, you've got to bring money back from overseas. Now, again, according to the press, initially, he was telling the pension companies to bring all their money back. No, they need to lower it to around 30% overseas. And it's over 3 years. And obviously, they've got inflows of billions a month. So in the end, it won't be that much money coming back. But there's also, you bring that money back into a small market, people might well be buying ahead of the trade, saying, oh, well, what are they going to invest in? And, we had the first test rollover yesterday, and that worked well. So the stock market's done well. The peso's done well. I think if a country really is in a bad situation, the peso doesn't value like it's valuing. It's the best currency in Latin America for the last 3 or 4 months or more. And we're not at levels we've seen before, but 3,600 versus, it's all forgotten. We were up above 5,000 when this guy came in. We had literally every economist saying, get your money out of the country, get your money out. So all these banks down here, I won't name them,
They were saying to all their clients, send your money to Miami, $100 million, we'll invest it for you, you make a fortune. So they sent their money at 5,000, invested in a stock market that didn't move. If they want to bring it back, they're going to bring it back at 3,600, and they can bring it to the stock market that's already moved. So, and this happened before. This happened when people thought that Duque might not win last time. Everyone hid their money overseas. Duque won. And by the time they brought the money back and paid commission, the currency had valued and the market had moved. They'd lost a huge amount on the carry trade. So stock market's doing well. We've got a lot of something I worked with when I started the exchange was the Mercado Global, which is the overseas stocks traded here, which was tiny when I started the exchange. But we got Chilean stocks listed here. Then we started bringing onshore a bunch of ETFs, and that continues to grow. And again, for the pension companies, they have to bring the money back. They can simply reinvest in the US in pesos. Mexico's huge. The euphoria in Mexico is massive, as we know. It's a massive market, and Colombia is trying to copy that. And so for all the headlines, it's like, well, you can still invest in half these stocks. You can just do it in pesos, which saves you half the fee. It's much easier. But what some of the people don't like of it is like, oh, but that means my money's visible. I might just have to pay tax on that. That's another issue.
Rupert, how is this new M? Because they have the guy who was head of the Colombian Stock Exchange is in charge.
Juan Pablo, yeah.
I mean, what's the status of it? It was supposed to be 2 years ago, last year, this year. What's
I was there. I was at the exchange when they began this, and in a couple of years we're going to do this. It's been behind schedule forever. It's still behind schedule. I know Juan Pablo's moved to Chile. I know he's working hard on it. He believes in it. And it'll get there, but we're not even, as far as I know, at the levels of what do we do about currency? What do we do about taxes? What do governments want? It's a very tricky thing. And still what we basically got is a holding company with 3 exchanges. And that's not really the image that it wants to project. We want one bolted together. I sit here and I can trade, Cencosud, or I can trade Alicorp from here. But at the moment, it's already years behind schedule. I know they're working hard, but I remember, remember when Mila was set up years ago? I was in Chile when they set Mila up. I was working for Celfin at the time, and all the Colombian brokers were coming down to visit. And it was crystal clear that Chile had no interest in Mila back in the day. It was pushed by Colombia, right? And again, now I'm not, they're all buddies, but it doesn't seem to have any traction. If you follow them in LinkedIn, for example, where you find me quite often, you would think that Nuam would have something to say every week. We did this, we did this, we did this. But what we get is periodical updates, and it just doesn't seem to have much momentum at all, which is a shame because the concept is brilliant, but it's a concept that's never been done. They're attempting something that's never been done across 3 currencies, 3 administrations with governments that are, Chilean, Colombian, and Peruvian governments aren't the easiest to deal with. And it's difficult. It doesn't, I think, sadly, it hasn't made the progress that anyone was expecting. I'm not saying it won't get there, but, I think we should have been up and running probably in 2025. We should have had cross listings and everything, but here we are in 2026.
What are the big economic groups? The Grupo Sura, Grupo Argos, all these big groups. There's like 4 or 5 of them. Who are they? Who do you think they're behind in the political process? What do you think they think about the?
Obviously, Medellin, we had a big development now because we've had the split up of the HEA. The HEA no longer exists. So there's a big economic group. Argos, Sura, and Nutresa, they broke up, which, honestly speaking, is the best thing because now they can make their own decisions. Nutresa was bought by the Glinskys, and they're already very aggressive. Nutresa is going to grow very fast. These groups generally, in Medellin I can speak to, they tend to cover their bases. If you get a mayoral election here, they donate to everyone, or a governor. Everyone gets money just so they're on side. But I would say up here they're gonna vote for the right wing candidate. They're not going to vote; they'll support. And I think that's with most of the economic groups. I think they would vote or back the right wing candidate or a middle candidate. Cepeda, they won't vote. They won't back. There's a risk in that, of course, because he knows exactly who puts money into the campaign. If no one backs him, I still wouldn't be surprised that he gets some donation from the private sector, just in case.
Colombia has historically been, well-managed economy, relatively high GDP growth compared to the rest of Latin America. That seems to have changed now. It seems to be also growing at the 2% that everybody else grows at.
Yep.
Or even less, right? And if you look like I was looking at the IMF forecast for Colombia through the next 5 years, and it's 2% a year, right?
Yeah.
Is that the new growth level for Colombia?
Well, when I came to Colombia 20 years ago, it was all over the place. It was 7, 8. It was crazy, right? But I think it's a reflection of the fact that this has become a very solid economy, and we've never had any financing issues. We've never had a debt failure. It's quite a sensible economy these days, and that's why despite all the banging of heads in Congress, the economy's trucked along quite nicely. 2.67 last year, 2.9 this year, 2.8 next year. They're not bad figures. We could do with more probably, but then let's see what happens, because with the new minimum wage and the new inflation estimate for this year, the inflation estimate's gone up from 4.5 to 6.5 for year end. I don't think it plays out that much. I don't think this minimum wage is going to have that much impact, but it could impact in terms of, refloating the economy even further, because an awful lot of people keep CDTs, which are short-term. CDTs are short-term bond or instrument you can keep in the bank and just do it online. Now, these things at the moment are paying 8 or 9%. If the central bank's going to move rates from 9 to 11%, people are going to be picking up 10, 11% without doing anything in the bank. And there are tens of thousands of these CDTs issued. I have them. Everyone I know has CDTs. So that money's going to come back into the economy, because you get a payment every month, and that's what you use. So there's, is there a risk to inflation? Yeah. I mean, obviously you don't want to see it at 6.5 when we should have been at 4.5. I don't see it going up that far. I just don't see it. I don't see, but that's economists, right? I mean, they'll say that and then tell you why they're wrong at the end of the year. They'll tell you they were right because it wasn't their fault. But so I just think it will keep moving along. It's become a sensible country. It really has calmed down over the last, the central bank's strong. They pushed Petro. Petro even loaded it, and still couldn't get them to lower rates, which Donald might find out quite sure.
You listen to Scott Bessett. He says now the U.S. is going to grow at 6-7% a year. So why can't Colombia grow at 6-7% a year?
Oh, well, when it grows at 6 or 7, you call me. No, but it just, I don't think at the moment because we're close to full, 8% here is almost full employment. When you actually strip it out, you're putting on, I think probably, I didn't look at the number because it just came out now, but I guess we put on 700,000 or 800,000 jobs over the last 12 months. So in agriculture, you're getting up. Where else do you expand? And it's very difficult. The oil sector doesn't employ a lot of people. I mean, and that's the other thing. I mean, he's seen as anti-oil, Petro's seen as everything that Trump despises, right? He wants a green economy. And Colombia is 70% hydro, right? It doesn't have much oil. I mean, you would think we were Venezuela, the way that everyone said, yeah, we got to keep pumping oil. I've got friends who work as geologists here. The big oil here is gone. And they're now working in Venezuela and other countries. So what he's trying to do is he's doing exactly the right thing. He's on the right side of history. It's like, let's make this a greener thing. We've got sun, loads of it. We're on the equator. We've got wind all the way, got 2 coastlines. Let's make a green thing. And it's seen as some way, and he's never said, I'm going to shut down oil. Actually, oil production has gone up during his, not margin much, but it's marginally risen since he's been in power. So that's the thing. It's the narrative. It's like, he wants to finish with the oil sector. No, the man's not stupid. It's like the UK with North Sea oil. You're going to use it to pay the bills for as long as you can. But here, your lifting costs are getting more and more. They found some big offshore finds. The gas you can take out, but the oil it just doesn't work. So, you need to move on. You need to get yourself off the oil drip. He sees that. But much as, the discussion around Venezuela, Texas, did Donald Trump sell Venezuela to Texas during his campaign? It's the same thing. People aren't realistic. We're not going to be pumping 2 times the barrels we are now in 10 years. We're probably pumping half. And same with natural gas. Natural gas has some big finds, but production's behind, right? And he suggests importing the cheapest natural gas in the world from Venezuela And somehow the right-wing capital market say, well, that's a bad idea. No, why wouldn't you import from Venezuela just half the price of bringing it in from anywhere else? But it's, obviously you don't want to get into a Western Europe Russian situation with gas. But again, you can all be handled. And again, those conversations are open again straight away. As soon as something happens in Venezuela, the conversation starts again. The problem is as with all the Venezuelan oil and gas infrastructure, is ruined. So a pipeline was built from Venezuela to Colombia years ago, but it needs repairing. So it needs a lot of money invested, etc. But they're quite sensible things. They're, when you think about the paradox of it was the right-wing governments here that put in fuel subsidies. I mean, that's a left-wing communist kind of fuel for everyone thing. And then Petro comes in and said, no, take the subsidies off. And everyone's like, that's crazy. He's doing exactly what you'd expect a right-wing government to do. And all hell breaks out. We're in a country where diesel is still cheaper than petrol here. So things are a little upside down.
What is the attitude towards Venezuela and the business community? I mean, is Colombia going to be a conduit for investment into Venezuela or the Colombian?
Obviously we had, when Trump won the elections, we had Duque, Uribe, all these guys going, yeah, Trump's our man, that's our guy. Duque kind of overlooking the fact that he was in power last time Trump was in power and Trump didn't come to visit. It was like, yeah, he's our guy, he's got us. But not really. But when Maduro got taken 3-4 weeks ago, there was it. This is it. Free Venezuela. This is what's going to happen. Honestly, most of us just sat here and go that this isn't going to play out that way. It is never going to play out that way. But there was an initial fear of mass migration again from Venezuela. But I think whatever timeline you put it on, however long it takes to get elections, to get investment into the country, it can only be positive for Colombia. That's our biggest trading partner. Back in 2005-06, this is when we had Chavez and Uribe, the worst of the worst. It was 18% of total exports. It was massive. So even under that situation, it was a huge export partner, and that will pick up again. But obviously, you got what happened. You saw the airlines going first. This all started to pick up as soon as Petro came in. And no, I don't doubt the private sector has got all their people in Venezuela already checking out what needs to be done. Personally, I don't think much is going to change. Rodriguez is an oil woman. She was behind the boom, well, not the boom, the recovery there. So I think Trump's found somebody he can do business with. The other lady took his Nobel Peace Prize. So as long as he gets his oil, he's going to leave him alone. He's not going to get into nation, but he's moved on. He's even moved on from Greenland now. He moves on every day. He'll find something new. He's with China right now in the UK. He's got no time. That's the truth.
What is the current state of Colombian investments in Venezuela? Is there still anything left?
No, very small. Very, very small. Because most of them pulled out. There was Helm Bank, Cementos Argos were there, Nutresa were there. But most of them, in Nutresa's case, I think they moved the plants they had in Nutresa. Exeter had something there. It's all very, very small. Very, very small. But they'll be the first in the door because they're a brother country. That's the simple truth. And the other upside is eventually, one imagines the 2 million immigrants that arrived here, enough will go back because they're not treated that well here. And it'll be quite interesting to see what happens. This will be like a Trump thing. They'll go back and then there'll be no Uber drivers, no waiters, and they're brilliant workers. They work fabulous. Everyone said the comment you always hear is, yeah, it was great. My waiter or my drivers are Venezuelan. They work hard. So if they decide to go home, some locals are going to have to up their game.
Have they had a huge impact on wages, pushing wages down?
No, because you got the minimum. This is the argument about the minimum wage, right? It's like there's an awful lot of people who don't get the minimum wage. Yeah, that's a number, right? There's still plenty of people below. Yeah, no, and they've been exploited. There's no question. I know stories in Medellin. I've met with a lot of refugees who've walked from the Venezuelan border. It's about 18 days to Medellin. And they tell stories of being employed in factories and just, minimum wage, no wage, and then being put into houses with like 20 or 30 people already in them. The beggars on the street corners are invariably Venezuelans. but they pay protection to the mafia to stand on the street corner. So their lot hasn't been that good. And I sat there with a lot. The biggest reason I found that most Venezuelans that I found here, when I spoke to the women, it was because of the health system. A lot of them moved here to find health for their kids. That seemed to that's a very personal experience, but I spoke to so many women here who were in foundations and refugees, and they were like, no. And I've been up onto, I've been up to the Guajira, I've been up to the border, I've been to refugee camps there. And, the problem is that what the Colombians said, a lot of the Venezuelans leaving for Colombia are the poorest and the least skilled. So I met mothers with 8 or 9 kids who'd crossed the border, and with no trade, and a husband who did nothing. So that's the problem. A lot of people who come into the cities are skilled, they can do stuff, but they get exploited. I'm not sure they suppress wages that much, but there's definitely a black market here where people are employed cash in hand, because you've got an informal market, which is over 50% of the labor market is informal. So I'm sure a load of these guys are working in the fields or working on road projects and just picking up cash at the end of the week.
Rupert, what's the Colombian position on the China question?
Well, we got the new Silk Road, right? So Petro went there. Donald was really pleased about that. Again, that's the thing. I was listening into Bruce McMaster at the Andy at a conference the other day, and they said, what would you ask of Petro? And it was a panel, and one guy who's a senior politician, writes books on politics. He was like, this is just the way it is. It's fine. We need to move on. And the head of the industrial association was like, no, but just don't provoke him. Don't provoke him anymore. That's all we ask. But Petro's going to provoke him because it works for Petro. He's a natural enemy. And the position on China is he went to China, the new Silk Road, Brazil and Chile, and these guys are all huge trading partners with China. So there's no reason why Colombia wouldn't be. If the US say we're not going to buy your oil, China will take all the coal we have. For the good or bad that is, there's no question at all that China will take all the coal. And, Chinese investment in Venezuela was huge, which kind of surprises me that they didn't get more active, because I met some of the big Chinese investment funds. I met them here, and they'd already been to Venezuela, and they were already doing housing projects. So that kind of surprised me that China didn't get more vocal about Venezuela. But in terms of here, there's these big infrastructure programs. The Chinese are already bidding for them. So I think there's an open dialogue. Now, it depends on what happens after June and August when we get a new president. If we get somebody from the hard right, they're probably going to say, okay, no more with China. But I just don't. It was the same as the UK. Starmer's in China with exactly the same conversation. Indirectly saying, well, you can't trust the US as a trading partner. We need to know what the tariff is for the next 20 years. You can't be 5, 15, 20. It's just nonsense. These tariffs never get put in because there's just no time to change them. So, Petro's doing no different than Starmer or half the other people or Carney or anyone else. It's the same. And why wouldn't you? China's, their soft power, the investment they put into Latin America, Colombian should have a piece of that. They've been very successful over the continent.
Yeah, so I imagine, of course, all the solar panels are coming from China. Yep. How about the auto market? Have the Chinese taken over the auto market?
Yeah, BYD. Dominating electric cars here. Tesla have just arrived, but BYD have just cut them off at the knees. They're the global number one. They're here. They are dominating the electric car market. It's incredible. I've got so many friends who got BYDs. They're great cars. They look like spaceships. They're well priced, especially versus Tesla. So the auto market, they've been extremely successful. They really have. Anyway, the big cars here, the luxury car here, seen as the Japanese, Toyota, Nissan, they're really seen as the top. We have Jeep, but really in terms of US, we don't have too much down here. So
does Colombia still have any auto manufacturing?
No, we never had manufacturing. We had assembly. We had a Renault assembly. But I think, that'd been interesting. From my window, I can see where it used to be, Sofasa. They used to assemble Renault here for domestic use and export to Venezuela. Now, that would be very interesting because that kind of died off. They just import the cars now. But it'd be interesting to see if Venezuela picked up as a market, this might be a backdoor assembly location to send to Venezuela again. But no, there was some assembly, but no, everything's imported now.
So all the other Chinese brands must be there too, not only BYD, I imagine.
Yeah, there's tons of these little cars where I don't recognize where they come from, but then when you look them up, they come from China. Yeah. Oh, you got like 4x4s, and what is that? I've never seen that. And yes, it'll be a Chinese brand that's because BYD's been so successful. I mean, it's got a good name. I mean, it's been there a few years, but it's really picked up. Really picked up.
What percentage of cars are running in EV, like Rupert? I mean, is EV really taking over in Colombia?
Not enough. But if you look, I haven't looked at a vehicle sales number in the last few months, but they're up hundreds of percent a year on year. But they're still 10% of sales, maybe. The big one is obviously the hybrid. The hybrid's got a problem because the Toyota have been extremely successful in hybrid, as have some others, but it's supply. Everyone wants to switch to hybrid because there's a number of reasons to do it here, obviously, apart from cost. And you go to a lot of the dealerships and they're like, okay, well, we can get you one for 2027. So within that market, you've got a very hard secondary market. The used market is almost, you're buying a car that's 6 months old and you're buying it for almost new price. So the problem is supply, because definitely people would buy them.
Are the big Colombian corporates, I think over the past decade, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a huge amount of capital flight from the corporates investing in Central America, in the U.S., and so forth. Is that continuing, or are they going to go back and invest in Colombia?
Sura became the biggest financial brand below the Rio Grande. I mean, because they bought all over the country. Sura is still in all those places. Cementos Argos just continues to grow. Nutresa, no one's really. Bancolombia made a small divestment in Panama. They sold out of one arm of their business there. I guess they're bringing that money back on. But you haven't seen a continued flow outside. But again, domestically, this market's like full, and then on top of that, you got Revolut's arrived here, New Bank's arrived here and set up. New Bank I saw is going to set up in the US now. So this market is still saturated. I mean, that's the problem. They need to look overseas, but in terms of you don't see the press. It used to be full of, Cementos Argos bought this in Houston or Nutresa bought this in Chile. Those headlines you don't see. I think they've got themselves to where they need to be. And it seems to have been several years of consolidation, to be absolutely honest. Because the main actors in that were the Medellin companies in the Haya. And because they've been involved the last few years in this breakup of this huge conglomerate, I think they've been more occupied with that than actually expanding the business, because there was no visibility as to what we're going to look like in 2 years. I mean, the financial companies are all the way up through Central America, obviously still. But again, you haven't seen them recently say, Grupo Aval have bought something somewhere. Those headlines are just died away. And we had a huge boom, obviously, going back 10 years. They were buying up every asset they could find. One was diversification, and the second was, at one point, when you sat down in Nutresa, they were like 74% of, coffee sales here, or 70% of this. There was just nowhere to go. So they set up plants elsewhere. But really, in terms of headlines, I think they've been too busy kind of sorting out what's going on with this whole conglomerate and the breakup.
And the big Colombian fortunes, are they keeping all their money outside the country, or they're bringing some back?
Well, this is Petro's biggest beef, right, with the tax collections. Because tax evasion is a huge problem here. I mean, it's a monstrous problem. I mean, you got every year you have to produce your wealth statement, your declaration of wealth, yeah. And even people like Alvaro Uribe will declare that, I'm not worth that much. I know how it works because I declare, and I know no one I know declares their full value, because there's no need to, because the government and the authorities haven't caught up to revaluing stuff. And the amount of money, obviously, in Panama is huge. A lot of money's gone to Miami. And they go there through Bancolombia, through the other banks, and they're formally invested there. But, do they pay tax on it? What's the tax situation with that? But there's so much money hidden in the Caymans and everywhere else. There's no question about it. And it's not been Petro. It's been most foreign ministers over the last 20 years have said, our problem here is the tax collection. It's the evasion. It's because it's the usual thing. The middle class get crushed because they're the ones who actually stood here with all their money in the country. They don't have enough to send overseas. And then the evasion comes from the middle class upwards.
Okay, with the time remaining, tell us a little bit about Alma Air. I mean, you got a seaplane company. I mean, is this a play on the economy and the boom in tourism, or what was the origin of Alma Air?
It's a play. So it's the same holding company as it did Viva Air here, right? So they invited me in a couple of years ago. They actually sent down a kind of secret mission pre-pandemic to speak to the authorities and look at the viability, because the seaplanes were here. Well, the first planes that were here, but they haven't been here for 70 years. So we picked up one a couple of years ago, went to the authorities, started doing or counting the chimney tops, as we say in the sector, just checking what's viability. And tourism here is obviously boomed, right? I mean, Petro's come strong and he's come through on tourism. He said tourism would make more dollars than oil by the time he finished. And we're really close. So, but tourism, we've got numbers, right? But what they're trying to do now is change the dynamic of tourism. So up on the coast, you've got internal cruises now have started. You've got Four Seasons building in Cartagena. So looking at a new type of tourist, not just numbers. And seaplanes are a natural here. So we did a lot of time in the Bahamas. I was in Alaska and Canada in December. Alaska and Canada in December. Bahamas, we've been looking around in conversations. And Colombia's a natural fit. I mean, you've got 2 coastlines, 3,000 lakes, 20,000 kilometers of rivers. So, and there's a lot of detached places you can't get to. So, it seems a natural fit. We're going to start small in a few months' time. But we've done the paperwork. Seems a good fit. And it's an interesting project. It's something different to do.
What are the main destinations that you would be going to?
It's 100% charter, because we don't want to run schedule, because schedule is where you get into trouble. So we'll have 2 initial bases, Medellin and Cartagena. So from Cartagena, you can go to the islands. You can go inland to places like Mompox, Islas Mucura, which is a beautiful island. You can get up to there. So a lot of these things we're looking at time arbitrage, right? So there's a lot of places that are 5 hours away, but you can get there in 20 minutes in a seaplane, or there's a 2-hour boat across open seas. So you're looking at time arbitrage, or there's a huge lake complex near Medellin called Guatapé. At the moment, if you go from Bogota to there, you need to go to the airport an hour early, fly an hour to Medellin, get off the plane, and take an hour and a half in a taxi. But I can fly you from Bogota's private airport directly there in less than an hour. So you're selling. I mean, as we say, there's certain things you can't buy in life, but I can sell you time, and that's the honest thing. It's an arbitrage. It's an experience. It's something different to do, and it's a natural fit here, definitely. And we know people who've flown seaplanes have come here and said this would be a great place to do it.
What would it cost for me to charter a plane from Cartagena to the islands for a day or whatever, or for half a day?
Probably there and back is going to cost you. Let me work. I'm just not working out. I work numbers here. It's going to cost you there's 8 seats, so it's cost you about $300 a head to get there and back, $350. But you're paying anyway to go on the boat, and I can fly you from Medellin to the island, so you don't have to go Medellin, Cartagena, which is an hour, plus 2 hours in a boat. I can fly you directly. Okay. So again, you're not paying that much more. It's not what you're paying; it's the additional you pay, and that's the key. The amount you're paying on top of a commercial flight is probably 35%. And there's plenty of people who are prepared to do that to save time.
Sounds great. What have been the major tourism destinations in Colombia? Is it Cartagena? What else?
Well, Cartagena was the biggest until last year. Medellin's now the biggest in numbers.
Right? For international tourism in Medellin?
Oh, we've got massive gentrification problems. No, massive. It's Americanized. There's a whole section of Medellin which is Americanized. I mean, they're 70% of the tourists, I guess, are from the US. Oh, no, it's packed. You won't walk around an evening. I was out last night. I mean, you won't go more than 100 yards without hearing an American accent.
Are these Americans living there or just on visit?
Both. Digital nomads, we've got tons. Every cafe is full of nomads. And then you got you're only 3.5 hours from Miami. It's a great place to come for a week. Medellin, yeah. I mean, it's become a party city. It's become another Cancun or another that kind of destination. And then beyond that, you've got, Cartagena and Medellin take up, Bogota gets more visitors technically, but most of them aren't tourists. They're just coming in, right? But yeah, Medellin, Cartagena are the 2 biggest, but now what you're seeing is people reaching out to new areas, right? I mean, there's a lot to do. The Amazon's really underdeveloped. It's not ready yet. It doesn't have the right hotels. The Amazon's going to be a huge one too. It's from Bogota, you can get to the Amazon in an hour and a half. If you're in Rio, it takes you 5 hours to get to Manaus. So it's an easy jump off point to the Amazon. So yeah, and there's tons of other places, but it's just underdeveloped. The Pacific coast has got the best whale watching in the world. You got the whales from Chile and the whales from Canada, and they all come down and they have a party in August. All the boys and all the girls, you can stand on the beach and see them. But it's completely underdeveloped. There's not enough routes. There's another one we're looking at from Medellin or Bogota straight to Bahia Zolano, where you can just go whale watching or deep sea fishing or whatever you want to do. So there's a lot of underdeveloped aspects. Despite the numbers going up, we really, really not even got started yet.
Amazing.
Beautiful country. I think Medellin has like the best climate in the world, doesn't it?
Yeah, it did. It flooded yesterday, but normally it does. Yeah, no, it's called the city of the permanent spring. So it's always around 70, 75.
What's the altitude of Medellin?
Between 1,500 meters and 1,800 meters.
Okay, it's very high.
Bogota's the high one. It's 2006. So
you get cool evenings.
Oh yeah. No one's got air conditioning here. It's warm. You sleep with the window open, but it's fresh. It's mountain air.
Rupert, amazing, buddy. Thank you again. That was awesome.
No, pleasure, man. Anytime, no problem at all. And catch up soon, John. Great to see you, man. I haven't seen you in so long.
It's my pleasure. It's great to see you again.
Tom, I'll be up in New York probably late February, March. So I'll let you know and we'll catch up. Yeah, all of us. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right, cheers.
Have a great time. Take care.